All right. Testing, testing. Okay. Hey guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. Today I'm going to show you how to cover Where'd All the Time Go by Dr. Dog. This is a drum cover I made about a year ago, probably over a year ago now. And I've gotten a couple people, which quite literally means just two people, asking how I made it, how I did it. And that's what I'm going to show you. I'm also going to basically show you how I do drum covers. I haven't done one in a while, but I'm thinking of getting back into it. And the process that I go through is pretty simple for making these drum covers, and I know there's lots of different ways to do it, but I choose a very direct, simple method, which I think is best. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive right in, I suppose. Let's start with just how I make drum covers in general. So I don't use any special app. I don't isolate any instrument or take out any instrument. I have a computer right here, and I have my audio interface, and I plug the computer into the audio interface. Obviously, that's how I get the mics working. And then into the direct sound that's feeding into that audio interface, I pull up the song on YouTube. So the audio from YouTube goes directly into the interface, and that's how I hear it with these headphones, along with the rest of the mics. And I just mix to the best of my ability. So I don't want the drums to be too loud. I don't want the song to be too loud. And I really don't play with it too much. Maybe I'll throw a compressor on there, depending on what the song sounds like. I try to take the song from the actual band's YouTube page for a higher quality, but sometimes I'll just take it wherever I can get it. So in this case, Where'd All the Time Go by Dr. Dog is not on their actual YouTube page, I don't believe. Where I'm taking it from is some other person's YouTube page. The audio is pretty good still. And like I said, I don't mess with the drum sounds too much. I just try to mix my drums up higher than the actual song, and then you can't really hear the drums from the actual song unless I just wasn't playing on it. But when I'm playing over it, and I'm playing over it precisely or accurately, then it all seems to work out just fine. So that's how I go about actually making these. But now we're actually going to get into this specific song. I don't do a lot of tutorials. I'm new to this. I don't know if I'm going to be doing this often. I really just want to fulfill a promise that I made to a subscriber. So that's why I'm doing this. But for this song in particular, some people were asking if I have like a drum transcription, and I never transcribe drums for drum covers, and I never try to play any song note for note, because that's too time consuming. Really all I do is I listen to the song a couple times. I try to break it down into categories of what the drummer is doing, because usually in songs there's 2 or 3 parts to a drum piece that make up the whole entire song, and I try to figure out what is being played within those parts, and I try to do it as accurately and as creatively as possible at the same time. So no transcription, and I'm also acknowledging that whatever I'm telling you to do here for this song is not 100% what the actual drummer is playing on the record. Another good tip, or a tip that I would suggest, is if you can find a live version of the song being played, maybe, there's a camera on the drummer and you can see what they're actually doing, but in this case I don't think that exists, or maybe it does exist but I'm too lazy to find it. But I don't know. It's pretty simple. It's a very simple process. It's not really technical. I'm not trying to go for 100% accuracy, and I'm not obviously trying to transcribe anything. Just listen to it. Use your ears. Listen to it. See what you can come up with. See what matches well. I mean, this is a trial and error process where I'll record a couple takes, and I don't think it's as accurate as it needs to be, so I'll come back and record a couple more, and until I get it to where I want it to be. But it's a relatively simple process. It's nothing too complicated, so I don't have transcriptions for you. Whoever was asking, I'm sorry, I apologize. So, Where'd All the Time Go? I break this song down into 3 parts. So there's 3 parts. There's the beginning part, which is a very similar drum groove to the main part. So part 1 is the intro. And there's multiple ways to play it. Part 2 is the main drum groove, and you can throw some fills in here and there. And I like to have the fills matching the third part of the song. And the third part of that song is probably the complicated part that everyone thinks of, or drummers think of when they're covering this song, is that long fill, right? That long single stroke, kind of slow fill, flowing between the toms and the snare, and kind of just going around in a circle. That's kind of how I like to think of it. But honestly, it's relatively straightforward. So I'm going to play for you the first part, isolated, and then I'm going to bring in the song and then play with it on the song so you can see what it sounds like. And I might do it a little slower on the isolated version if that helps you. But let's get into it. So first part, intro to the song. It starts with a nice little groove. I play it on the hi-hat. I've seen people play it on the rims of toms instead, which is probably more accurate, but I did it on the hi-hat because I like the sound of it better. So here's what this sounds like. Okay, very straightforward. It's very similar to what the actual meat of the groove is in this song. You're just adding a couple more snare hits. You're playing a straight 8th note groove. Very simple. I'm not doing much with the kick. I'm really just keeping quarter notes sometimes. I'm not doing all quarter notes, but I'm just doing some. It's very straightforward. So here's it a little slower, if that helps. Okay, you got that? Let's bring in the music, see what it sounds like. All right, so that's the first part of the song. The second part of the song starts after I made that little fill, and we get into the meat of the groove, which is when the singing, the vocals come in. When he sings Where'd All the Time Go? That is majoritively what the song is going to be. That main groove, which is part 2, which is what I'm going to go over. It's an 8th note groove, so 8 on the hi-hat. I like to mix in some 16th notes onto the hi-hat groove, but I do it sporadically, and I don't have a specific pattern for it, so I'll probably play it different every single time. But it's a very similar groove to what we just played, and it's the same tempo, and it's a very relaxed groove and chill. I like playing it differently every time because I think it feeds in well to the vibe of the song. And I don't really think there needs to be a transcription of this, or and this certainly isn't 100% what's actually being played on the song, just so you know. I think I've said that a couple times. This is not what's being played. I'm certain of it, but it sounds similar to what's being played. So I'm going to play the groove, and then I'm going to show you what I do for the fills, because there are some fills in this main groove, and I'd like to play them all very similarly, and I like to play them in a way that they're similar to the part 3, which is the harder, like longer fill. But this will give you some good practice, some lean into that part 3, because if you play the fills in the part 2 in the main groove, if you play the fills oh God, I'm gonna have to cut this part. If you play those main fills in a linear fashion, there we go, linear fashion, which means just single strokes in a circle around the top, the rack tom, floor tom, and then back to the snare drum, and then going like that, that's going to give you a good idea of how to play that part 3. So if you play the grooves, what I'm trying to say, if you play the fills in part 2 in a similar style to how you're going to play part 3, that's probably going to help you in part 3. So I like to keep everything very simple, and I like to be repetitive with my fills because I think it works for a drum cover in particular. If you're doing too much with the fills, it can be a little much sometimes. My philosophy with playing drum covers is just to not do anything too crazy. Sometimes you can take liberties and do some crazy fills sometimes. But honestly, I just kind of want to flow with the song and make sure the song is sounding good. That's just my philosophy. Some people will disagree with me because drum covers are all about like showcasing the drums, obviously. If a song has really good drums and you kind of want to do some crazy shit because that's, I can see that. But I like to keep it simple, I guess. So here's part 2, the main groove. I'm going to play it for you, isolated, and then we're going to bring in the actual music, and we'll see how it goes. Alright, so that's basically what you're going to be doing. It sounds very similar to part 1, the part 1 groove. And if you notice the fills, as I said, they're very linear. They're just single strokes around the toms, right? So there's nothing too crazy. There's no double strokes or anything like that. I did sneak in some 16 notes on the hi-hat. So I'll play it again, just slow it down a little bit. But honestly, it's just all about the feel. If you get this groove feeling nice, feeling good, this is a groove I practice a lot, so I'm very comfortable with it. But just keep practicing this groove because this is a groove that you can use in a lot of songs. Not just this song, but you can apply this a lot of different ways to a lot of different songs if you like doing drum covers. So check this out a little slower. Okay, let's see what it sounds like with the music. I'm starting to fly. See how the hands go, waving goodbye. No, I get so forgetful when I look in your eyes. Now she's walking backward through a parade, and I'm stuck in the shadows, blocking the shade. Ain't no way to sweep up the mess that we made. She gets dressed up like a pillow, so she's always in bed. Flowers for. All right, the music's a little soft in my headphones, so I'm not sure how this is going to turn out. The drums are probably going to be a lot louder, but I think that's good because we're highlighting how to play the drums on this part, so that's fine. I don't want to do this all over again, so I'm just going to roll with it. I stopped right where we're going to enter part 3. Okay, so part 1, one time. Main groove is part 2. With some fills orchestrated in there. Then we get on to part 3. All right, and these are how the songs work. After part 3, you go back to part 2, which is going to be the same thing. Main grooves and fills worked in there. Then you're going to go to part 3 again. Great. And then after that, you're going to go into a variation of part 2, and then the song's over. So that's what I mean when I say break these songs down into their sections, because each drum piece of an entire song has different sections, and in this one I see it as 3. You could really argue that it's just 2, but that's the pattern here, right? So we went through part 1, we just went through all of part 2, then we're going to get into part 3. Then after part 3, which is that longer fill, we go back into part 2. Then after another part 2, we go back into part 3. Then we go into a variation of part 2, and then the song's over. So thinking about it in terms of, if you were thinking about a rhyme scheme, it would be 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2. Song's over. Okay, so this is part 3. There are different ways to play this, and I'm going to try and break this down and make it as simple as possible, and this is probably a simple way to play it. I don't even know if it's the right way, if it's the exact way that it's being played on the song, but this is how I figured out how to do it in a way that probably sounds okay. I mean, some people on YouTube think it sounds okay, and maybe some people don't, but that's fine. So here's part 3. It starts with like a really simple, like not even eighth note, just quarter notes, honestly, on the hi-hat. Well, it's eighth notes on the hi-hat, but just really simple, like one measure of just keeping time, and then we go into, it's like a build, it's a swell. So it's like a really simple groove, and then a really simple fill, and then the simple groove, simple fill, and then we get into a longer fill, which is the complicated part. And it's only complicated because it's kind of hard to keep time. So I'm going to play for you how I think about part 3, and then we're going to try to match it with the music. I'm also going to turn up the music actually right now, because part 3 you're going to need to hear the music, just for my sake, so I can keep time. All right, so let's see what this sounds like. All right, the first 2 I did probably weren't as accurate, but that last one is what part 3 consists of. Like, that's the beginning of the long fill, and it's that's kind of the only fill you really need to know for this song. So I'll do that one again. All right, so I got into the longer fill a little bit, and this is going to make more sense when you actually hear the music, but that's really how you want to think of it. It's really simple, linear, like break it down into a simple drum groove, and then the fill, which is usually what complicates the song for most people. It's really all about timing. So if you can keep that timing sharp and just follow along with the song well, that's the hardest part, but the fill itself is extremely easy. And even though that isolated version isn't exactly what I'm going to play when the music is on, it's the gist of it, right? It's just single strokes, slow around the toms. And that, if you'll notice in part 2, the fills that I was doing, they're very similar to the thing that you have to do in part 3, which is just circle around the toms. Yeah, so let's try and do it with the music and see what happens, and take it from there.
So she's always in bed. Flowers for the sick and dead. She's on the go, way too fast and way too slow. She'll turn the stone in hospitals and funeral homes. And when the pond rises, somebody sighs who's not in disguise anymore.
All right, so that's part 3, and then we get into part 2 again. You get into part 2 right after that long fill, which I tried to play, and it's a good way to think about it is part 3. It's the long fill, which is the crux of this song, the problem that most people are going to have. It's the same fill as the shorter ones. You just extend it, and all you're doing is playing 1 2 1 2 1 2. You're just going around and you're only playing twice on each one. So the shorter fill that you hear is just this. That's the shorter fill of part 3. 1 2 1 2 hit. Right? So it's always 2. It's always 2. So the longer one is just that same thing. You can start with that same thing, but you just extend it. You just extend it for the length of the measure, right? So the longer fill is just the same thing, but just extended, and you're just doing 2. You're still just doing 2 around the whole thing. Okay, and you're going to end on the same place. I don't think you end on the snare with that longer fill. You might end on the rack tom, hitting twice on the rack tom or hitting twice on the floor tom, and then going into the crash and then going into the groove. So I'm going to try to play it one more time with the song, and then I think that's basically it, because the rest of the song is repetition, right? So let's try to play it one more time and see what happens.
Always in bed, flowers fall up like a pillow, so she's always in bed. Flowers for the sick and dead. She's on the go, way too fast and way too slow. She'll turn the stone in hospitals and funeral homes, and in the paradise, somebody sighs who is not in disguise anymore.
All right. What happened there? What's the deal here? I thought I said twice all around. As you clearly heard and saw, that's not twice, right? That was more. What was it? It was more something like this. It's 3. It's not 2. It's 3. 1 2 3 1 2 3 hit. 1 2 3 4 5 6 hit. That's the fill. What's the extended fill? Is it 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3? I don't think so. I think it's 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Okay. So I'm going to try that again, see if we can flesh this out. I haven't played this in over a year. Yeah. But it's definitely 3. It's not 2, okay? So hopefully you're watching this whole video if you actually want to get the tutorial. I'm not great at making tutorials. This is my first one, so I don't know. But 1 2 3 1 2 3. That's the short one of part 3. 1 2 3 1 2 3 hit. 1 2 3 1 2 3 hit. The extended fill, I'm going to guess, if I remember correctly, is the same thing, but extended. But after you do 1 2 3 1 2 3 hit, you're going to do 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2, you know, for however long. So let's try that again, see if my theory is correct.
She gets dressed up like a pillow, so she's always in bed. Flowers for the sick and dead. She's on the go, way too fast and way too slow. She'll turn the stone in hospitals and funeral homes. And when the fall rises, somebody sighs who is not in disguise anymore. There's nothing to keep you from falling in love. It starts at the bottom, it comes from above. Like pieces of a puzzle, like a hand in a glove. She gets dressed up like a pillow, so she's always in bed. Flowers for the sick and dead. She's on the go, way too fast and way too slow. She'll turn the stone in hospitals and funeral homes. And when the tide rises, somebody sinks and is gone in the blink of an eye.
You get it, right? You get it. I was right. I was right. And I kind of played it out to show you. So we did part 1, part 2, part 3. Go back to part 2. I played that. Go back to part 3. Same exact thing. Nothing different. Then, as I stopped in the middle of variation of part 2, which is a little harder rock, you can kind of freeform that a little more. But the long fill, I was right. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Hit. That's a short part of part 3. The longer fill. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. You end after hitting twice on the floor tom. After hitting twice on the floor tom, you end. Okay? So however many times you go around, you're going to end after hitting twice on the floor tom. So in that every time when you do that long fill, you do the long fill twice in the song. Same thing, right? So it's like this. And then every time you play that long fill, you come right back into part 2, which is the main groove. Okay? Wow. I don't know how long this video is going to be. I don't know if that's going to make any sense whatsoever. I don't even know why some people even wanted this to happen. But I made it happen. And maybe you learned something from it. Maybe nobody will watch this video, and that's probably okay too. It's my first tutorial that I've made. I don't know how it went. Let me know. If anyone watches this, please, for love of God, let me know how this went, because I don't know. I might do some more drum covers. Do you guys want me to do more drum covers? That's another question I have for you. And if I do drum covers, do you want me to show you how to do them? Some of them probably are going to be very easy, because I don't like playing complicated stuff. Not just because I don't know how, but because it's not my kind of music. Anyways, I should wrap this up. If you have any more questions about this, or you think I did a terrible job, please let me know in the comments so I can try again. But this goes out to that one subscriber. You know who you are. You asked me to do this. I said I would, only if you like the video. So I'm trusting that you're going to like the video, because I'm going to put this out. And I really hope you do like the video then. Because, I held up my end of the deal. Ball's in your court. One guy. I made this for you, man. This whole thing's for you, okay? All right. Have fun. Good luck. Try it. Try it out. Let me know if you tried it. It might work. I think it will. Anyways, thank you. Thanks for listening.